Web of Light. I am Dr. Kevin, and I'm here with
Angie Donju.
And we just want to welcome you to our Web of Light family. For those of you who may be seeing the Web of Light for the first time, please let us know. I know that we're getting picked up by public access channels all over the country, and we're currently being represented from Maine to California. We don't always get told, so if you are new to our Web of Light family, send us an email to drkevin@weboflight.com or Angie@weboflight.com, and we will welcome you into our Web of Light family. So, Miss Ange.
Yes, Dr. Kevin.
You know what I did this morning. You don't know what I did this morning because I didn't post it. There was something else I did this morning besides what we've already talked about.
Okay.
You want to know what that is?
What was that?
Okay. This is a family show, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I wonder if I can. Well, I guess I can.
Okay.
I registered to vote.
Oh, my.
You know, I've only technically been a legal resident of New Hampshire for a few weeks now because I was splitting my time between New Hampshire and Phoenix. And so when I completely was done with Phoenix, I did the big official move, and everything is now here in New Hampshire. So I went to get my marriage license, and at the same time, I registered to vote. So one of the things is, though, our state is one of only the 6 states who, I can't remember who it's in charge, Secretary of somebody, of something, Secretary of State, I think, whoever, has decided to share the voter information with the Trump, trying to distract from the real news, creating fake news, voter fraud identification committee.
Yes.
And I almost hesitated registering to vote because of that. And I've actually been thinking to see about creating a petition to challenge the decision to change our information. And I want the petition to read, until Donald Trump apologizes for lying about us busing people in to vote, when he stops lying to other diplomats and apologizes for telling the Mexican president that he won New Hampshire based on the fact he was going to stop drugs into our drug-infested den of a state. When we get a public apology, we will work with this waste of time, waste of energy, waste of money commission he set up to try to hide the fact of the lies he tells. Did he get elected? Yes. Did Russia help? Well, we know that Russia helped because of what they did, helped swing some people's mind. We know that that is actually a fact. Okay. Did he know about it? Well, we don't know what he actually knows and doesn't know. He doesn't know what he knows and doesn't know because he contradicts himself. But if I started a petition to say, don't send our information as a state until we get an apology, would you sign it?
Oh, I most definitely would.
Would you pass it on?
Most definitely. I was in total disagreement when I saw that our state was allowing that to go on.
I don't know if the information's gone out. I don't know if it's too late to start a petition, but I feel like that was outside the parameters for that person to make a decision that should have gone into some kind of vote by the people of this state, whether we wanted to participate in that or not, especially considering that for whatever reason, I truly think he has maligned New Hampshire more than any other state since he's been president. And we need to not chase after him like a puppy dog.
Well, a lot of this is the fact that every state should be requesting that. Every person in any state should be requesting, because, we have to remember, we the people are why politicians are in the positions that they're in. And we the people keep forgetting that factor, that we have these people working for our communities, not for their higher good. And that's what's lacking right now.
Absolutely. And, people sometimes feel as though their vote doesn't matter, their voice doesn't get heard, but none of our basic liberties or abilities to get involved all the way up. I mean, the only limitation is you have to be born in the United States to be president. But you can, if you're have been declared a naturalized citizen of the U.S., you can become a senator, a U.S. senator, a U.S. representative. You can become a judge. You can become a governor of a state. Those people are running. And there's a lot of people out there that say, well, if I don't have a lobbyist group underwriting my campaign, if I don't get millions of dollars to do or run campaigns, that I'm not going to get heard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have any input into my government. Now, I love the way they do it in Maine, in the state government of Maine. You know how they do it there?
No.
They limit how much. Last time I checked, I don't think this has changed. It could have, but a good friend of mine, Justin Alfond, who's a senator up there, term just ended. He got timed out of his Senate seat, but he was the senator representing Portland, the Portland area. You had to get so many people to sign to get you on the ballot, and then you had a budget of money, and everybody had the same budget, and that's all they could spend.
That's the way it should be.
Yes. So outside money could not come in and give somebody an edge.
Right.
And I think that every state should follow this model so that an average person, the normal person I hate the word normal, but the everyday person who is out there and just wants to be a voice of their community, their neighborhood, their city, their county, whatever it is, isn't held back because somebody else is getting a lot of funding because they want a lot of favors at the end of the day.
Yeah. But you also have to look at the fact that a lot of people are so used to this. It's the normal to most people to see that. And a lot of times they'll look at the candidate who does come out of the woodwork and is funding themselves and are not getting oodles and boodles of this funding. They kind of look at that as like, well, maybe they may not have a chance to make it. So I think I'd rather put my vote towards this other person because they get the funding, but they're the best of the two evils. And that's another problem that's going on right now. And so they have to eliminate the funding that comes from these sidekicks and have everybody be equal so that people can look at that as they are all equals. And now who do we truly desire to have in that office?
Now, did you say that they could no longer take money from psychics so we can't donate? I can't agree more. And I have long thought that two things should be put in place. And I'm going to talk briefly about those, and then I'm going to let you introduce today's guest so I don't make a fool of myself. And the one is what they do in Maine, I think should be carried to the national level. I think that there should be a budget. And if you're caught spending more than it's allowed for a Senate seat or a House of Representatives seat or the president's seat, everybody has the same pool of money. You don't get any extra money. You're not allowed any extra money. If you get caught spending it, you get thrown out of the election. I think that that should be the law of the nation so that we can truly have the person who lives as an everyday American, not a rich, spoiled, pampered American who doesn't understand that you fell on hard times and maybe you needed food stamps for a few months to feed your kids. Maybe you needed some support for the state because your job got eliminated or your company got closed down. I mean, people that accept assistance are made to be, druggy, lazy, don't want to work. Do you have some of those? Yeah. But you have drugged out, sex offending, cheating, thieving, low ethics, low morals in Congress already. So what would the difference be? They're already there. They infest the White House. What's the difference? So I think that we have to stop going for these cheap, no face to it, kind of advertising, promotional campaigns, these sensationalists. I think it all needs to be brought in. And the second thing is, I think that every senator, every House of Representative, and the president should get paid on the average of their district. What is the median pay that their district gets? If they're coming from a state where the median pay of their person in that district is $45,000, why are they getting $150 to represent them? If they had to get paid what their average person gets paid, they would be a whole different senator, there'd be a whole different House of Representatives, and if our president only got paid, and out of that pay, if he went over his security budget by having to, have 5 homes that's being protected or whatever, if that had to come out of his pay, if he had to pay the difference off for the extra security instead of the American people, we would have a different government. That being said, introduce today's guest. She's headed for the door. I think she just stepped out. No, go ahead.
You have to add one more factor to all that you just spoke before we can introduce her.
Go ahead.
And that would be that the American public has to realize that we do not have to have people in the campaign that declare themselves Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever. We are people.
Yeah, I registered as an independent.
Those days
undeclared, actually.
are needing to go away.
Yeah.
Wait for the person who the person is.
I live by that old great Southern motto, I do declare. I declare on the day of voting which party I want to vote for in the primaries. Right? Does that work?
I'm in that same boat. So now, after all of that, wow.
We went there.
Yeah. And so let me introduce to you now Brenda Noiseux, which I hope I said that right. Noiseux, I think is the way I said it. This is a lady who, after a decade working in technology, she is flexing her own creative muscles through her consulting company and her art. She's a community builder, science fiction geek, and writer. She's using her superhero powers for the good of all kind, including running for the Alderman in her home city of Manchester, New Hampshire. We met her a little bit back on her campaign trail, and we thought it would be a unique person to come in and add to this wonderful program that we're doing today. Welcome, Brenda.
Hey, Brenda, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Well, I was worried this was going to be a boring spot, but apparently I was wrong.
She's clearly never seen our show before. We won't hold that against you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. No, but thank you so much for having me. It was great when we got a chance to meet on Matt Connarton's show, and I'm really excited. You had some really great questions on that day, so I was really excited to come and continue the conversation.
Yeah.
So this is the first time you've run for office.
It is indeed.
Okay. And there are things in your bio that I'm going to probably end up having to ask you about.
Sure.
That has nothing to do with the show. But anyways, I want to start with what made you decide,
Okay.
and what was the process that was involved in doing it? Because I think a lot of people don't understand what it takes to, and what is an alderperson?
Sure. Oh, lots of questions to get started.
Yeah.
So where should we begin? So I started thinking about running for office probably about 10 years ago. We were in a space in our lives. Our son was probably in middle school age-ish at that time, and we had thought in our house that one of us should run for office. We believe in giving back to the community and being community builders, and one thing that we found lacking was people in our age group. At that time, that was our late 20s, early 30s. We were thinking that this is the time where we need to step up and be leaders in our community. At that time, I decided not to run for office and get more involved in community building projects. For example, working with trying to get a food co-op in Manchester as part of the Manchester Food Co-op, or starting meetup groups like Women in Tech and makers, maker spaces, people getting together talking about different projects and things that they're making. I focused more on that angle. I just happen to be at a really great point in my life right now that I have the time and energy to run for office. So that's really where it started. I've been thinking about it for a while, talking seriously about it with some friends for the past 2 years, and really making the decision this past December to run for office this year. So it's been a long thought process. I know that's not the same for everybody, and I appreciate that. That's wonderful. I know some people who are really sparked to action after the results of the election, which is great too. Anything that sparks action, we need more people running. So for me, it's just been kind of a long, slow burn to figure out when would be the right time and where would be the right fit. An alderman is similar to a city councilor, so a lot of people are more familiar with that term, city councilor. So we deal with kind of the everyday nuts and bolts of the city. And it's not as exciting or as glamorous as some people may make it out to be. It's really things of like budget and roads and plowing and vision for the city. It's not a glamorous job. You don't get offices or fancy cars or anything like that. It's really the nuts and bolts of the city. For anyone who's interested, most towns have their community access TV, and most of those will go ahead and broadcast those meetings. So if you're interested in seeing what happens at your town council or in Manchester for our aldermanic meetings, you could go to your community access television and generally find those. So Manchester, we have Manchester Access Television, and they're hours-long meetings, so just be prepared.
Yeah.
But you can find out what's happening and see the agenda and see all the glamour.
Here in Hudson, we have a selectman mode of government here, but they do show the selectmen meetings and the town board meetings. Same thing on community television, which are very interesting. If you ever, put it on, you might be amazed at, getting to get involved with what's actually being stated at some of these meetings.
No, it's great. And also with radio, I know that that with our public access radio, so not NHPR, which a lot of people listen to, but there's also your public access radio that you can listen to some of these meetings as well. So because I love to listen to talk radio in my car, I listen to the school board meetings. So I don't have to watch those per se. I can at least just listen and keep in tune with what's happening on our school board committee as well.
Now, so do you still have kids in school?
I do not. My son's 21.
Ah.
He's out of school. But he did attend Manchester High School, so Manchester Memorial High School. And they were fabulous. We had a tough high school time with him, and I can't speak more highly of them. They were fantastic all around. And I feel like we owe them a lot. I usually get really teary-eyed when I talk about it, so.
Well, that's good to hear, because there's a lot of questions about the condition of the school systems and where things are and things like this. And I do want to say, because I was on with Matt, you were off playing Mrs. Partridge this time at Philadelphia.
Yes.
And I was on with Matt on the Magical Mondays. Twice a month, Angie and I do Magical Mondays, where we go over a new age or metaphysical or alternative concept or idea and take questions and stuff like this, which is what we were doing when you came in, when we met you. That was our first one. Though I think that was a Wednesday. That's when we set them up to be Mondays. But
It was an announcement. It was like a big announcement.
Yes.
Ta-da!
Yeah.
So, when we look at this, so being an alderman, how many aldermen are there in Manchester?
We have 14. So we're divided into what we call wards, so kind of demographic area, or
Yep.
geographic area rather, not demographic. Geographic area. So we are divided into 12 wards. So there's one alderman for each ward, and then 2 at large, who can represent the entire city.
Okay. So going on to this, you would be one of 14 voices making decisions and things like this.
Correct.
Now, can you, in an alderman position, and I want to explain, it may not be the same in Hudson, it may not be the same in Nashua. again, our show, we got stations all over the country that pick it up, but it's easy enough to find out. And I just want her to explain in Manchester, New Hampshire, what she did. I suspect it's probably not hugely different in other places. But how long is the length of an alderman?
2 years.
2 years. And do you have any idea because this is the first time you're running, but I'm sure you've researched it because you're a research girl.
I am.
Yep.
I'm NT.
Yeah. What's the time commitment?
Sure. So it can depend, which is really interesting. From a meeting perspective, there are meetings twice a month that are just the mayor and board of aldermen. So those meetings can be 2-3 hours. There is usually a public comment section if anyone would like to come and publicly comment. There's the agenda people need to go through, and sometimes there's the non-public session for issues of personnel or things that need to be kept private, usually personnel type of things. There are also other committees that the alderman can be on as well. Some of those committees will meet separately. Some will just meet the hour or two before the aldermanic meetings, kind of marathoning your time together. But then there's this really interesting component of taking feedback from your constituents. And so the numbers there will vary because in areas where people aren't involved and they're only really calling every once in a while when there's a problem, that outside commitment can be a lot lower. But as you start to get more and more people involved and more people feel like they can come to you, that time commitment can grow exponentially. So sometimes what they're finding in areas such as Nashua, where they're encouraging more candidates and more activity, is that they're actually trying to have volunteers help out and get more people involved in responding throughout a person's term, because you want to increase participation, but that means you're now increasing the time that you're spending as an elected official, if that makes any sense. So for example, in my ward, we have about 4,000 registered voters. We have more people than that, but we have 4,000 registered voters. So you can imagine if you're not necessarily encouraging those people to reach out to you with their concerns and their questions, let's say that maybe you're only responding to complaints or worries, maybe that's only 10 or 20 calls a month. But if you want to encourage that feedback and you're responding to 4,000 people each month, or let's say even half of that, 2,000 people each month, or even a quarter of that, let's pretend that of those 4,000, those represent 2,000 households. We'll assume that some of those folks are married or partners or whatnot. Say that you're even responding to a quarter, now you're increasing that. So it does, in my case, I think I am going to be using a big chunk of time because I do want to have that feedback. But it is one of those things that will increase the amount of time that you're spending on being an elected official. It's almost like a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Now, what kind of compensation does an alderman in Manchester get?
I believe there's a stipend. It's not a great stipend. It's a small stipend. I think it's $5,000. I'm not quite sure. I'm not really concerned with the stipend, so, but I believe it's a $5,000 stipend. And then they have access to the city's health insurance, which is a point of concern for a lot of our residents. This is not a full-time position within the city. It's not a full-time paid position per se, like even if it is $5,000, that's not covering anyone's cost of living for 1 or 2 years.
Okay, and I want to clarify it. That's $5,000 a year
I believe it's $5,000 for the term.
for the 2 years.
Yes.
2 years.
I can I'll double check, but again, it's not one of the reasons
Yeah.
I'm running, so.
Yeah, I just wanted
But
to
it's a
be
good
clear.
question.
Some people might be thinking, well, $5,000 a month, I could live on that.
No.
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 Well, I
No.
do, but I just, you don't know what the,
That's true. That's a very good clarification. Thank you.
for people who aren't really local here, that may be watching this in another part of the country, Manchester, New Hampshire is the largest city in New Hampshire. So I would be surprised if any of the other cities paid any more than that based on,
Right.
but I just,
So I believe, the population, I'm not really too sure, but I know that they have the highest population.
they're about 109,000 right now, I think.
Yeah.
The last time I looked.
Yeah, we're usually right between there, so 110, 115, usually around
Yeah.
there.
And so some people have concerns about access to the health insurance. Would they continue access to the health insurance when they're voted off?
I don't
Or-
believe so.
So that also, especially with all of the chaotic craziness that's going on with, like health insurance these days, jumping on a policy for 2 years and then trying to jump back on your own policy, I mean, that's a little messy anyways.
It's not too bad. It's if you lose coverage involuntarily, then you can get back. If your spouse was covered or your partner was covered and you had access, you could get back onto another plan because you've involuntarily lost your coverage.
Yeah.
You would just need to do it within your 30-day window.
Yeah, well, that's right now. We don't know how that's going to change.
That's true. That is right now.
As of right now. So now, if you wanted to do something like a version of a town hall meeting, like a ward meeting, because they're called wards, correct?
They are
Yes.
called wards.
Yes. Warding, that's what Wiccans use to protect from evil spirits.
Maybe that's what I need to do. I need to go around the edges of my ward. And
Bless the corners.
I don't know that I have any white sage right now. I just have cooking sage. I'll make a parade out of it. It'll be fine.
But let's say you said, look, for the length of my term as alderperson, yes, I'm going to keep on saying alderperson, is once a quarter I want to do a town hall meeting that people could come and ask questions or stuff like that. Would the town cover the expenses or give you the place, or would that actually have to come out of your pocket?
Well, I think that's a great question. One of the things that I really want to do is do a monthly. And maybe, because I'm maybe optimistic and idealistic, maybe even twice a month. What I'd like to do is some type of, coffee ongoing, like the first Saturday of every month you can find me here from 10 to 12, and maybe the second Tuesday of every month you can find me here at 6 to 8. And come and tell me your concerns, what's going well, what's not going well. There are some venues within our district. I'll just use district because ward sounds, not as much fun. But in our in our district, that I may be able to partner with. I know there's a school that does. One of our schools does like a parent coffee night, so maybe that's something I might be able to partner or pair with.
Yeah.
I might not for school safety reasons, but there may be some businesses or places within our district that I can go to.
Do you have a school in your district?
We have one elementary school in our district.
Okay, so
Everything else is kind of around.
Memorial Central or West doesn't fall in your district. Okay.
Yep. We're right next to it. We can walk to it. It's less than a mile from our house, but it just happens to cross over the line, just barely.
That's probably what, Memorial?
Yeah.
Okay. So you might get to school to be able to like open up their gymnasium or something like that for a meeting.
Right.
The mayor in Nashua will post coffee days just at a Dunkin' Donuts where he'll be in the back room and you
Right.
can just stop in.
But I
and-
think
And say
that's
hi.
more conducive when you're dealing with the general public. And I actually grew up in Manchester, and you didn't see too much of that. So I'm kind of impressed that you're discussing that.
Yeah.
Do you know of any that already go on like that?
I don't. I don't, and it makes me very sad.
Yeah.
Because I do think, you mentioned a little bit in my bio that I came from technology, and I was a senior product manager. And one of the things that technology has done in the past, 5 to 10 years is it used to be this idea of, we know what's best for you, end user. Technology is hard. It's expensive. We're the experts, and we're going to code it the way you need it and solve all of your problems for you. And that didn't necessarily work.
No.
So,
Right.
so over the past, 5 to 10 years, there's been a change in methodology, which is really going out and finding out what those problems are, right? Like going to meet your users, going to see how they're using things, talking to them about their problems. And it's actually been so successful. And I had so much success when I was managing my product. I think it's such a great way to do it. But you have to be open and you have to give people avenues to access you in multiple different ways. And so that's what I kind of want to take to the aldermanic position, is that I don't feel like we're having that right now. I don't feel like we're making the extended effort to reach out to the folks in the community through canvassing, through monthly meetings or quarterly meetings. Even quarterly meetings would be fine, or other ways that we can reach people. More community boards where we're posting information for people who may not have access to the internet at home. But I want to do much more outreach.
But that's, I love that concept. And, it's one of those concepts that, can you imagine our congressmen or our senators or all that doing that?
Well, they were
Meeting with us at Dunkin's, or meeting with us at, not just like, oh, we're going to this big classy hotel or this big classy spot, but the typical, like maybe a coffee shop that everybody goes to, someplace like that, where people can just come in and say, I've been seeing this pothole down on 2nd Street for like 3 months now and nobody's done it, or, different things like that. Or, we keep going to this intersection and there's no stop signs there, and we saw 3 accidents in the last 4 months. Instead of having to go to a actual meeting of like the department at the city hall or at the town hall, having that opportunity to say to the person you have elected, what's going on? Hey, let's shoot the breeze and talk about this, and then you can do what you're supposed to be doing and take our concerns to your meetings. And kudos to that. I love it. I love that idea.
Thank you. Well, I think another problem that we have in Manchester is I think there's a perception problem, and I think a lot of cities probably have this as well. The perception of what you think the city is versus what's actually happening. And I don't claim to know the exact difference either. But for example, there was a body found a dead body was found in a park in our district about 18 months ago. And so that, of course, made headlines.
Yeah.
But not a lot happened in the follow-up of what are we doing to make it safe, right? So that body, if I remember correctly, it was unfortunately somebody walking in the wee hours of the morning, an older gentleman at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and it seems like maybe he walked into a drug deal. So, but a lot of people don't know that. They think it was, the middle of the day and maybe some gun warfare, and now everything is, unsafe. But there wasn't a lot of follow-up in terms of what are we doing to make that safe? Is there more police presence? What were the details? How can we combat this? Is the neighborhood watch taking a look? The local neighborhood watch taking a look at this area? So people just keep feeling that perception of something that happened 18 months ago. And I think they feel very vulnerable about it because they don't know what happened.
Okay, so I have a question for you. The current alderman in this district is an alderman, right?
Correct. We have actually never had an alderwoman in our district.
Until
If I get elected, I would be the first alderwoman for our
when is the
district.
election? I'm just curious.
The primary election is September 19th, and then the general election is November.
Okay. And are you and this gentleman of the same party? Are you or are you running against somebody? Because there's always a party system involved somewhere.
There usually is, but the good news with Manchester City elections is that they are nonpartisan.
Okay.
So
good.
I do not have to declare a party, and I don't choose to. Versus the incumbent, who is Alderman Bill Shea, he is listed as a Democrat. And we do have a third person who is running, who I believe is listed as, or has been previously listed as a Republican, because he's run before for other seats. So whether he's changed to undeclared or not, I'm not quite sure.
So now, how long has Bill Shea been doing the alderman thing?
Over 20 years.
So there's obviously no term limits in alderman.
No, no, there are not.
Okay. So, and you're part of his district right now,
Correct. Actually,
So-
the whole time we lived in Manchester, we've been in our district.
okay? Now, is there, does he run any kind of, and I don't want to make this I don't want to politicize this, this is an informational question. So in this day and age, has there been any reach out of saying, you're in my district, if you want to be on my email mailing list, I will give you information of the stuff going on in our district?
I have not heard of any.
Okay. Is this something that you would offer to say, if there's stuff going on, you're in my district, I'm going to email it out to those of you who wish to share your email addresses? Would this be something you would do?
Oh, absolutely. If people were interested in something like that, I would absolutely do that. Right now, just for even the campaign, I have a portion of my personal website that talks about the campaign. So it's almost like a mini website within my personal website, as well as a Facebook page where people can come learn more about me and learn more about my campaign adventures. So adding on the ability to do an email blast if people were interested is not that difficult. So if that's something that I heard from people that they wanted, I would definitely do that.
It strikes me as like, as you heard at the beginning of the show, I just registered to vote. I just officially became a New Hampshire person. Again, I can't tell you how many times I've been a New Hampshire person throughout the years. I was born in this state, which is frenetic. No. So as we're having these conversations, I'm thinking, I just found out who is the person that's my ward person, my district. And you said aldermanic?
Aldermanic. Yes.
Aldermanic. We saw, I have to tell you this story though, quickly, it's a quick side. Okay, we saw that, Jeff and I, when we were registering for our marriage license today, and then I was registering to vote, there was this aldermanic meeting room that they listed, and Jeff looked at it quick and said, Maniac Alderman? Should we really be promoting that? Because when you look at how it's written, that's how it looks like. It looks like Aldermaniac. Not to be confused with Wizamania. Thank you, Wicked. And you thought this was going to be boring.
I had no idea.
But now I want to go find out from my alderman, and I'm just discovering all of this, because I would want to be on an email list saying, these are the issues and this is what's going up. I mean, you could do it on a Facebook page, but if you have feeds like mine, and I've got a lot of people on my Facebook, your feeds get lost.
Right.
So, I'm thinking in this day and age, it's not going to cover everybody, but if there was something that you put out in as many ways as possible, I'm going to do an email blast once a month updating you on, these are the issues in the city, this is how I'm thinking I'm going to move on it, but I'm asking you as my district, what would you like me to do?
Right.
I'm here to represent you. I mean, I feel like everybody, when they go into Washington, completely forget about what their people back home really want.
Well, and the really interesting thing is that, so I'm on the email list for all four of our representatives in Washington right now. And the thing that bothers me and makes me not want to open those emails is that every single one I receive comes with a, we need you to donate at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, that irritates me, I
that-
ignore it.
And I don't like that. And so it turns me off to the point that I don't even want to read the email that they're sending me. Although I think that they're trying, that's not the type of feedback that I would like to do. So I think when I say, and I have hesitation of, if people want that for me, it would not come with a donate button first and foremost every single time. Maybe if I was campaigning, but that would be a different list, not my constituent list. Hint. And that would be different. So if you're looking for ways to improve your campaign, elected officials have different lists, please. But if they were interested, I would definitely do it. I just don't want people to feel overwhelmed. But I would definitely do that. And I was actually thinking too, and I don't know that our local paper, if they would be open to it or not, but we have the Manchester, we have the Union Leader, And we also have Manchester Inklink, which is an online presence, as well as the Hippo Press, which covers, pretty much the southern part of the state. And for those people who, again, aren't online or for whatever reason, because there are some of those folks in my district, could I partner with one of the papers and write a column, just a quick column, once a month or whenever they would give me the forum to talk about what's happening in the district, and to remind people that I want their feedback. So really trying to touch all of the different ways that I might be able to get the message out to people.
Well, I think that, reaching out and where I think a city, whether that city is Manchester or Nashua or that town is Hudson, anytime you're trying to, in a nonpartisan way, reach out to your constituency for information or connection to give them a chance to weigh in, I think that the city should underwrite that cost. They don't need to, I don't want to get into like alder people salaries or stuff like that, but just if you said, I want to do a bulk mailing to everybody and I want to give them 2 or 3 choices. I'm going to put out a monthly email to update you on what the issues are and blah, 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 blah. If you would prefer, here is a Facebook link. You can join the page. I will post the same email there. And then the third one is, if you're not somebody who is internet savvy or does not want to connect through the internet, I'm going to create a special list where I will do a print copy of that and it gets mailed out. And then it goes to all 4,000 well, actually, it should go to everybody in your district. It should not go to
Exactly.
just the registered voters.
Exactly.
That may be a way where somebody would choose to register as a voter because they go, hey, my voice is going to get heard. So do you know if you want to do a bulk mailing like that, as an alderman, if the city would like underwrite that?
I don't know that they would, but it's something that we can definitely bring up. I don't know that, again, because budgets are tight, if that's something that, even the voters would want to be underwritten by the city. So I think there'd be some discussion that goes with that of, do you think, we'd have to figure out if you wouldn't want to say it's just for one ward, you'd have to budget or estimate for all 12 wards, so if everyone wanted to do one. And then you would have to say, okay, this would be the anticipated cost if everyone did it. The city, I'm assuming, they might not have access to lower rates because I don't know if they would qualify for the right status for the bulk mail postage rates, but if that could be a factor into it. And if it was something where you looked at it from a budget perspective and it wasn't astronomical, I could see people in the city supporting it. But I think it would come down to how much is this really going to be and what is our expected value from it. I think it's easy for us to say, well, we want more people to vote and we want more people to be engaged, but we'd have to set some goals as to what that engagement would look like and say, this is what we think the value is going to be, this is how much we can do it for. Let's pilot it out and see if it works and see if it really gets more people engaged with the city. I think something really interesting is that just recently the mayor sent out a survey. And I thought it was an actual annual survey from the mayor's office, and they picked people. They said, you're not going to be you might be the only one in your neighborhood. We're just doing a representative sample. And it asked questions about some of the hot topics in Manchester right now. Well, I thought from, again, my background in the business world, this is great. I hope we do this every year. I hope it's just not an election year scheme. Like, I hope this is something that we truly want our mayor to get our feedback, and even if it is just going to selected few, maybe my neighbor was this year, maybe I'm next year, so on and so forth. But come to find out, is actually from his campaign, and it wasn't printed on every piece of paper. So even I missed the fact that maybe only one piece of paper had the fact that it was from the election campaign. But I thought, well, that's terrible. I was all excited that maybe we were actually sending out surveys about what are the important topics, even just from the mayoral level. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like we were. Looks like it was just a campaign ploy, which was really sad. So I would even be fine. I think the residents, if we said it, even if it was just for the mayor, because that's one, and then the results get shared with the aldermanic board, I can't imagine that there would be a lot of pushback. Again, we'd want to look at cost, but even just narrowing it down to 1 instead of 14 and maybe rolling it out would be a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I've done a bulk mailing. I think it was 12.5 cents per piece if it was a bulk mailing. I think it went from 9.5 to 12.5 cents per piece, which if you're sending it out to 100,000 people, of course, and then you have printing costs.
Right.
But if you said, this is a off election year every other year, so it does not
Right.
feed into mailing, and then the alderman can choose whether they want to opt into their district or not, and then 2 years later, there might be a different alderman or alderperson there,
Right.
then they could opt into it or not. But, you can't just say, I want to increase the voters, we want more people involved,
Right.
and then not do something in action to put that forward.
No, absolutely. And I think some of it's grassroots, right? I think that voters, not just in my district or my city or in the state of New Hampshire, I think there's a lot of voter disenfranchisement. Like, people don't think that their vote counts. I have lots of conversations about my vote doesn't count. Well, in Manchester, in our municipal, another word for city, elections, so don't be concerned, don't be confused if you look and you're saying, where's the city election? It's called municipal elections. In our last mayoral election 2 years ago, the vote counts vary a little bit depending who you talk to, but everyone agrees it was less than 100 vote difference between the two mayoral candidates. So yes, especially at a city level, everyone's vote counts. So I think if you can start even just in small bunches and small batches showing that people want to be part of the process, maybe it just starts out as a Ward 7 initiative. That's the ward I live in. Maybe it just starts out as my own personal mailing list of people opting in, and then once people start seeing some results of it, it's something that you can take and say, let's do this as a citywide initiative and get people behind.
How many people are actually in your district?
That's a good question. There's not good data on how many people are in my district, unless maybe I buy a mailing list from a big company just to find out addresses. But I do know we have about 4,000 registered voters, or 4,200 registered voters.
4,200. Any ballpark of what that is? I mean, because do you know? I mean, you have 12 districts, and so you're talking 12 districts, 100,000 people more or less, and you divide that back. But so there must be some really small districts and some really big districts.
Some of them are more rural than others. We just went through a redistricting a few years ago. But we have so some of our districts have a lot more renters. So there's a disparity in renters to single homeowners or, 3-family homeowners even. So in my district, we actually have certain pockets where there is a high concentration of renters, which also makes it difficult in terms of, turnover for people who have lived there or are moving in and out of the ward if they're renters. So it makes it harder to see how many people that you might even have who are eligible. We also have some different ethnic groups in our areas, as well as other districts in Manchester, where there are pockets of where people may be overlooked because you're not quite sure how many people would be eligible to register to vote in those areas. I'm not saying that I'm overlooking them. I'm just saying that may be another reason that some of those numbers are harder to get.
Would you say your district is more or less than 20,000?
I would imagine it's less than 20,000.
Okay. Do you think it's more or less than 10,000? Which would be more or less the average district if you have 12 districts. I mean,
Right. I would imagine they're probably about 10,000.
Okay.
But again, I can't confirm.
I know it's a guess. I get that. Which means that you're running between probably 40 to 50% of your district, which voter registration, that's actually high on a national state level. Why do you think your district the district that you're going for, why do you think that district has outperformed the average, which is actually lower than that?
I think I think part of it is we do have a lot of single-family homeowners. We are still a very blue-collar district, so we still have a lot of workers in the district who believe that voting is important. There are lots of people I talk to who are registered to vote and who do go out and vote. It's very few people. I've had 2 people who don't vote and didn't want to talk to me about the reason they don't vote, versus I've had some other folks saying that they don't vote, but we're open to having the conversation. So people realize, and I think it's also part of the New Hampshire way, that we realize the importance of voting because we are first in the nation. But I also think that people in this district realize that it's easy to go vote and it's important.
Okay. So it's been a long time since I lived in Manchester. I used to live in Manchester.
Oh, you did? Where?
Well, I lived in a few different places. I actually went to Manchester High School West
Okay.
for like 2 years. I graduated early, but I went there for a couple of years.
Okay.
It turns out Kevin that just won the special election.
Yes, Kevin Kavanaugh.
Yeah, Kevin Kavanaugh that just won. Turns out that we graduated within a year of each other at West.
Oh.
We may have known each other back then, but we weren't certainly close. But it's kind of interesting. It showed up on the Matt show when Matt Connarton unleashed when he came in, and then I've gone back and lived in the city a couple of times since then. Upper Elm Street and right in the central area.
Okay.
So I want to ask you a question, and you can choose to say no comment if you would like.
I like that.
In the days that I lived in Manchester,
Okay.
the Manchester Union Leader was the precursor of basically Fox News.
Okay.
It didn't care about the truthfulness. It only cared about its political agenda, and it was very clear. And they did some nasty things in the days I lived in Manchester. They actually got their hands illegally on the list of the members of a gay club and published it in the paper at a time when gay bashing was happening on a regular basis in Manchester. I mean, they did some really awful things. Naki Loeb published a front page article back then saying that God sent AIDS to get rid of the homosexuals
Oh,
on the
lovely.
front page ad, on the front page. That was her big editorial. So I have had no respect for the Manchester Union Leader for years. In your opinion, because you talked about maybe getting a column or something like that, has it become a more fair and just paper, or do you think it's still very politically bent? In your experience.
Sure. I think it's become more fair. I don't think anyone would claim that it is a bastion of fairness and equality for everyone, but I do believe it's become more fair. I think you'll find more of the aggressive political side of it in the editorial section of their own. But I will say, in all fairness, that they do publish letters to the editor that will be very liberal and will be very counter to it. They have published stories about things that I've been surprised that they have. So, for example, a few years ago, I did an anti-protest kind of rally. When our executive council in Concord were looking about taking away funding for Planned Parenthood. Manchester, again, one of the largest cities, the largest city in the state. Our Planned Parenthood clinic provides all types of health care for women and men. And to worry about those people potentially losing health care coverage, valuable health care coverage to them, was upsetting to me. And so there was a protest, a Planned Parenthood protest that was happening, and so we did a counter rally, and the union leader covered it. And they sent out reporters to take photos of our side and to take quotes, and they did a story, and so they did. There was a transgender rally a couple weeks ago, and they sent out photographers. They did not cover the rally per se, but they did show a positive photo and then ran a story. It was right after Trump had made the comment about transgender in the military.
Yep.
And so they ran it against a poll that said the majority of Americans believe that transgender should be able to serve in the military. So they didn't cover it per se, but it wasn't covered negatively.
Right.
So I think they are becoming more fair, but they are definitely still conservative leaning.
Conservative. I was born in Manchester, and many years I was there, and I do still approach and see the union leader. And yeah, I mean, it's been a given for quite a few years that it was a very conservative
Decades.
decades, but I too have seen a little bit of a difference
Yeah.
as we go through.
Well, and I think part of that too is what's happening across all of journalism right now and printed newspaper. If you want to keep a print audience, you need to be aware of the people who are buying your printed papers, and I think I think that's probably the biggest factor in terms of how they change their coverage is who is buying, and if your audience keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, then you need to make sure that you're giving them coverage that they're willing to pay for.
Yeah.
We want to thank you very much for coming on. We are out of time.
Wow.
Brenda is doing her first run as an alder person in Ward 7, District 7 in Manchester. September 19th, you said, was the primary. She's undeclared. So if you are watching this in Manchester, you can go I do declare, and she's got a lot of very 21st century cutting ideas of how she'd like to modernize at least the ability for the individual to communicate to their city government. Brenda, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great time.
Have a great day, and from all of us here at Web of Light, your vote certainly doesn't count if you don't cast it. Namaste.